Recently, I was watching an interview with a old rich white dude on CNBC telling people that they need to work more. If you need to make more money, you need to work more. Now, there are few things in this world that I love more than an old, super wealthy guy who probably hasn't actually worked in decades or maybe never tell everyone else how they should live their life. But it got me thinking about how I started out, how much I used to work until I got to a point where I learned how to leverage my time. And that's how I became financially independent. And anyone can do it. So I remember when I first got out of the military and I wanted to build a business, I wanted to make money, and I had no idea how. And I had no money. So my first investment, I lost everything. It was a complete failure. It was bad timing and bad investment. And I wasn't all that educated. And, it was mostly my fault. But that's what you learn. Those are experiences that hopefully you can call back on and educate yourself from and improve on and do better in the future. So when this guy was talking about how people need to work more, I was thinking about how much I used to work. Now, I worked a ton at that time. Everything I did was hourly. So I remember working for a company, ASM. It was, I think it was called American Sales and Marketing. It was like the most generic company ever. I worked as a merchandiser in a grocery store. So I would go in as a contractor and reset the shelves in the grocery store. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen people do this. I think stores hire their own people to do that now, but you would reset the shelves, stock everything, and that was your job. Now, people might be thinking, Nico, why, did you want to work in a grocery store? Is this something, some career that you were interested in? No, I could care less. I did it because of the hours. I started at 4 a.m. So I'd drive to a different store every morning. At 4 a.m. I would start and work till late morning. Sometimes we'd be done, right around the 8-hour mark, maybe a little bit less. But then it would allow me, I would take a short break, and then it would allow me to start another job. So I had, 2 basically full-time jobs, and then sometimes I would have another job on the weekend. So I did what this guy said. I worked a lot of hours, and what I learned was, yes, you can make more money doing things that way, but you're also slowly killing yourself. You can only put in so many hours. And those kinds of jobs aren't the ones where your salary is going to go up and up. They're pretty much set at whatever they are. Okay, your hourly pay is your hourly pay. If you don't like it or you think you can make more, you quit. The company doesn't care because they'll just find someone else to fill the slot. So it wasn't something where most of those hourly jobs weren't something where you could progress into, some kind of mid-level management job or into the C-suite of that company. So then I realized I want to run my own business. I want to be self-employed. That way I can leverage my time. So I can do something, but I could charge a certain fee, maybe more, maybe less, and I can work when I want or however much I want. I want to provide a service so that I can put in a lot of hours or put in fewer hours, depending on how much I can charge and how much work I wanted. Eventually, after going through, this job, this profession, that profession, I actually made a list of things that I thought I would be interested in. And these were professions, okay? Licensed professions that had some kind of barrier to entry. You needed some kind of license. You needed some kind of qualification. So it wasn't something that just anyone could do. And I like that because it kept some people out of it. Things like a real estate broker, a CPA, a stockbroker, an insurance salesman. Things where you need to be licensed, maybe be bonded, go through some kind of state background check, fingerprinting, testing, some kind of barrier. So I made a list. Now, at the time, I was living in Maryland, and I also knew that I wanted to live somewhere else. I didn't know where, but I wanted to be able to move around. I wanted to try and, figure out where I wanted to live. I have no family, so I had no roots anywhere. I was sort of a nomad. So eventually, I got into real estate appraising. Now, what I liked about being a real estate appraiser is getting a license is extremely difficult. I kind of got into it at the right time, and I worked for multiple appraisers to satisfy my requirements. So one of the things that makes it so difficult is you have to work as an apprentice under a licensed appraiser for at least 2 years. You have to log a whole lot of hours working for them, and then you take the big exam. And part of it's federal, part of it's state, and it's just very difficult to find someone that actually want to babysit you for 2 years. But again, I got in at the right time. There was lots of business, and at that point, there were appraisal companies. Today, mostly everybody is a self-employed one-man show, which is what I would eventually become. But what was great about appraising is that I would set my own fee. It was like being a lawyer, being a CPA, a bookkeeper. You set your own fee. You go out and get clients. Now, that's not for everyone, but you would go out and get clients, and I would say, okay, this appraisal is close to my house. It shouldn't take me that long. Looks like a pretty easy house to figure out. I'll do it for X amount of dollars. If I get the order, I get the order, I do it. Maybe something's farther away, I might charge more. You get my drift. So over time, I began to actually cut my hours. So rather than working constantly, which is what I did initially, and which most people do initially when you want to make money, you start to learn how to leverage your time. More hours doesn't necessarily mean more money. So I started cutting back my hours, but I was taking more difficult orders and charging more money for them. So I started to work less, but I was making about the same. And then I started to shrink my coverage area down. So at the time I lived in Maryland, I covered the state of Maryland, which is pretty big, by the way. I also got licensed in DC. I got licensed in Virginia. I did some appraisals in Northern Virginia. I even did a few in Delaware, right across the Chesapeake Bay. I had some clients that gave me a lot of work. I made friends with a lot of my clients, and I did well. But I started to shrink down a little. So I was working a little bit less, cut my drive time down, so I didn't have as many hours, working in the day, but still making the same amount because I would, charge a little bit more, take an appraisal that was a little more difficult. Maybe someone else didn't want to do it. And then I started to invest my money, and I invested in real estate because at the time it was all I knew. I didn't know anything about the market. It's just, real estate was something everyone said it was a good investment. This is where you want to put your money. I knew everyone who was investing in real estate at the time. All my friends were investing in real estate. This was the thing to do. Now the market took kind of a hit. I sold my properties. I had several properties, one in another state. But when the market took a hit, I sold it all. And it was a great thing because then I started to really get into investing. I started to study the market. I educated myself on the stock market. I quickly learned that I had been investing in the wrong thing. I can make 3 times the return in the market. I don't have to go into debt to invest, unlike a property where you're going to have to get a mortgage and go into debt. And it was a liquid market, so I didn't really have there's no barrier to entry. If I had $50, I could invest $50 and start making a return right away. And I love that. And I love not having to worry about tenants, the depreciation of the house, the destruction of the house, wear and tear. I didn't have something physical that I needed to worry about, and I thought that was great. Not having to worry about tenants and deal with people, that was perfect for me. So liquid paper assets were my thing. And I didn't like investing in individual stocks because they're very risky. I didn't want to watch the market every day. I want to invest in something and forget about it. So I learned all about ETFs, exchange traded funds. And to this day, I am mostly an ETF investor, and I love that. I think that's the way to go. So I started investing in ETFs, made a little bit more money. I bought my first house that I lived in as a primary residence. That was a step up from the very first home I bought, which was a condo. Okay, now I'm in a townhouse. Eventually, I bought a detached house. Now, for me personally, I learned that I don't like big houses. It's the opposite of most people. I'm a single guy, and I don't need that much. I just don't need it. Okay, I remember this house had a dining room. I've never eaten in a dining room, and I don't know, maybe my whole life. Other than parties with other people, I don't eat in a dining room. I sit on my couch and put my feet on my coffee table. but it had a big dining room. It looked cool. But I quickly learned I did not like detached houses. They were just too much. Maintaining the yard, okay, this is Maryland, it rains a lot. You got to cut that grass sometimes twice a week. Pain in the butt, especially if you're an entrepreneurial guy like I was. I was doing appraisals at the time. I was also selling houses. I started a brokerage. I had employees. I was doing this. I was doing that. It wasn't for me. Now, that was a good thing because then I learned, okay, I like condo living. And from then on, I've been in condos. I owned a condo as a rental property. Once the tenant left, I sold my detached house. I moved back into the condo I owned, and I loved it. I haven't looked back. To this day, I live in a condo. But the whole adage of working a lot of hours to make money might be true initially. But at some point, you have to find something where you can leverage your time. For me, it was becoming self-employed. For other people, it's simply a career with advancement opportunity where you can move up and make a bigger salary. Now, this person also said you'll never be able to retire working a 9-to-5 job. Okay, there's some nuance to that. In some ways, I agree, but in some ways, I disagree. And like I said, there's nuance to it. So if you work a 9-to-5 jobs, you can retire, but the key is two things. You have to live within your means. If you can, live below your means. And you want to take as much of that disposable income that you have at the end of every month and invest it. You want to make a significant rate of return to increase your net worth over time. So you put it in the S&P 500, you're going to make 12% a year. The top performing sectors of the S&P, tech, healthcare, consumer discretionary is another one, you're going to make 15 to 17%. So you build out a portfolio and you take your disposable income at the end of every month and you invest it in that portfolio. And you allow that portfolio to grow and grow and grow until you're much older. If you do those things, there's no reason why you can't ultimately stop working, retire, live the good life, do whatever it is you want to do. Work part-time, don't work at all. Travel the world, go on some kind of adventure, visit kids, grandkids, friends, start a business, start a new life, do something that you've never done before. But you're not going to be able to get there unless you put in the work initially, figure out a way to leverage your time, whether it's working at a company and moving up at that company, getting more and more money for the work you put in, or becoming self-employed like I did, or starting a business, hiring employees, leveraging their time, growing and growing and growing, and having a successful company. And hopefully at some point, you will have the money to do all those things, to do some of the things that other people can only dream about.